What am I going to do? This is worse than ever. Ari, thank God, she's finally awake again. And you're back. Does that mean Dad? Hi, Ari. Dad. Sorry I ran off. I needed some time to think. Well, you've got yourself a good roommate. She helped me talk through it. And Marcus is pretty cool too. We bonded over sweater vests. They're comfy and easy to wear. You don't need to be sorry. She's really... Things have gotten bad since you left. She's just shut down. Yeah, we saw the end of it. And it sure got under her skin. Pythia's always hated therapy, but that was something else. Seeing Pythia give up like that was just hard to watch. I thought that if anyone could make a difference, she could. Wow, I underestimated how much these two believed in her. You're sold? You want a sweater vest now? I admit that the thought came to my mind of like, I kind of want to consider getting a sweater vest. But then I considered like, why? You know, like if I'm already wearing a t-shirt, what is a sweater vest going to do? If I'm having a sweater, I'm wearing that to be warm. You know, but what does a sweater vest do? Like, is it just a fashion statement? You know, if the goal, like, do you have to wear long sleeves to make a sweater vest work? And it has to be a fashion statement, right? It's the only way it makes sense. Listen, everyone. I've seen Pythia this upset once before. It was not fun. But when she pulled herself out of it, well, that's when she decided to run for office. Oh, right. And shortly after that, what's important here is she'll pull through this. I know she will. We just need to have her back. No more chucking notes through the portal, though, right? Make no such promises. Keeps your torso warm, but keeps your arms and pits open and light. But why would you want your torso warm, but not your arms warm? The central core of the body is always going to be the warmest part of the body. But your extremities are where the least amount of heat is going to. At least in comparison. That there's no way someone was like, I want to invent a new type of garment where I want to keep my torso warm, but my arms can get cold. What if I just chopped off the little arm parts of a shirt or a sweater? That would do the trick. I'm sure crazier conversations have happened. Mom? Mom, where are you? Ugh. Okay, get up off the floor. Come on. Why are you back here? It's over, Adney. Not over, Mom. My original answer didn't work. That's baffling, but there's more we can do. You can't just back down. You have to keep trying. Whoever said that was a fool. You said that when you first got here. Well then, point made. I am the Queen of Fools. Been lying for so long, Adney, to myself, to everyone. Putting on this optimistic, patriotic mask. Trying to ignore everything clearly broken around me. Smiling as I cut my feet on the glass. I mean, yes, things are really messed up, but Okay, you know what? I'm not the right person to convince someone to be less jaded. If I may, please. I have a plan that could help the senator sort through her current motivational miasma. It could also address the disillusionment you have expressed from the very beginning. Let me guess, debate another dead guy. No, that approach clearly isn't working. So it's time to debate two dead guys. An exciting twist, yes? Sure, Arbiter. And allow me to introduce John Rawls and Robert Nozick. Both professors at Harvard, these men had profound influence on the political left and right, respectively. Please, you give me too much credit, Arbiter. Oh, drop the modesty, John. Remember what the Guardian said in your obituary. I wouldn't know, Robert. I was dead. So was I, 10 months earlier. But all information is available here, you know. The English-speaking world has lost its leading political philosopher. Well, for quoting obituaries, the Telegraph called you the greatest American philosopher since William James. Are you sure about this, Arbiter? Growing up in the United States, you likely have a pre-existing allegiance to some variation of their ideas. Engaging both will force you to switch perspectives more readily than you otherwise would. This is your grand plan. Deliberately mimic the nonsense I deal with in real life. It's not nonsense. Political debate furthers the discourse and challenges our stances, helping us make society better for all. John's right, though frankly, he should have accepted that my utopian principles are superior by now. If you can consider your principles utopian, and not part of a financially obsessed dystopia. What does that mean? I care about plenty of things that aren't money. I always say people who like sunsets are just as valid as people who like yachts. You only say that when pretending the rich are discriminated against. The focus has always been on defending the yachts, not the sunsets. Well, at least I'm not a covert authoritarian. You don't mean that. Sunsets, yachts. Stop, please. Rawls, Nozick, I know you've been at this for a while, but can we slow down and stop flooding my idea slate? Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Jones. Yes, as am I. He's just so wrong about everything. God, this really is like the real world. Let's start with just one of you, shall we? The rest should flow from there. John, would you like to start? If I must, I suppose your work was mainly a response to mine. Not just a response to you. Please. There is a common reason governments fail. One your previous debate with Fannin covered in stark detail. Ours. Right, turns out people hate each other, which is why this is all pointless and I should just rot here. Well, it can get pretty dire, yes. But if we adopt the right mindset, we can make real headway on this issue. We simply must deal with the problem at its source. This source. I have a feeling that Manodride has been spending this entire time Googling sweater vests and trying to find the source of its invention. But then to just come back to me and be like, ha! Sweater vest, sucker. What I say. All societies are fundamentally cooperative ventures. To succeed, they must draw forth the willing cooperation of all. Yet most governments cannot escape inherent bias. Those in power help themselves, undermining cooperation. Imagine instead that every decision maker was stripped of all knowledge of their particular lot in life and placed behind a veil of ignorance. With no knowledge of their status, participants wouldn't be able to rig the game in their favor. Such leaders would be compelled to design a fair system, one that guarantees willing cooperation from all citizens. By placing ourselves behind the veil of ignorance, we assume the original position, a state before self, and thus before self-interest. Ah, yes, the original position. When this idea was first proposed, the intelligible realm was abuzz. Immanuel Kant was especially impressed. I'm aware we've exchanged autographs. Unsure how I feel about that information. So, you think if all my fellow senators could just forget who they are, we'd be golden? What a practical solution.
Nonsense!
You are getting hung up on non-ideal theory, Senator, but we must first establish our ideal theory. Ideal theory. Ideal political theory assumes ideal conditions, people willing to comply with whatever rules are chosen in a society sufficiently well off to support them. It helps establish the target, and you need the target before solving the potential complications. The original position may be impossible for us to fully attain, but it's the perfect decision-making target. Fine, whatever. I'll try anything at this point. Marcus, if you're watching, we're switching our research to an amnesia machine. Maybe I can use it to forget this whole travesty. The perfect decision-making target. We'll see about that. Come on, Ariadne. Let's ask a few questions. Oh, you're helping. Of course. I couldn't leave you to fend for yourself against the diabolical John Rawls. Uh-huh. Well, we should get started. But you're already expecting a dream of me wearing a sweater vest? I suppose that's a possibility, isn't it? Okay, all societies are fundamentally cooperative ventures. To succeed, they must draw forth the willing cooperation of all. Clarify. Variants of this idea have been repeated in other debates. It boils down to this. If people dislike their government, they will overthrow their government. So a government must be viewed favorably to last. The only way to successfully get the cooperation of all is to serve all. Back it up. It may take months, it may take years, but a lack of willing cooperation will destroy any government. After all, why would citizens willingly obey a government they do not approve of? You yourself established this quite well in your counters to Machiavelli. Connect. This is one of the key tenets of a successful government. As I lay out my principles, it will become clear that they fit this tenet quite well. Yet most governments cannot escape inherent bias. Those in power help themselves, undermining cooperation. Clarifier. A government that does not serve its people instead serves the people in government. Okay, that was a great clarification. Should have led with that. What reasoning do you have to support this? People bring with them a set of self-serving preferences and biases. These biases naturally tempt individuals to rig the game in favor of others like themselves. Now, given our world's limited resources, some attempt to justify this behavior as necessary to survive. But left unchecked, especially in powerful positions or when determining a constitution, this tendency becomes very dangerous. Can permanently skew society in favor of one demographic, which, as we've learned, will lead to collapse in the long term. Yeah, plenty of history's made that apparent. Two ideas. Connected. This establishes the problem my philosophy will solve. Imagine instead that every decision maker was stripped of all knowledge of their particular lot in life and placed behind a veil of ignorance. Clarify. Participants would not know their age, race, gender, intelligence, work ethic, sexual orientation, anything that might favor or disfavor them. People stripped of such knowledge are said to be behind a veil of ignorance. You can alternatively refer to them as being in the original position, a state before self-awareness. Couldn't decide which term you liked more, huh? They have slight different uses. One refers to the state you enter, the other to how you enter it. Back it? It's a thought experiment. There isn't really anything to back up. I already explained to the senator how, even if this ideal state isn't perfectly achievable, picturing how people would behave in it is still helpful. Connected? Understanding the nature of the original position helps get us to the mindset we need to solve our essential problems. With no knowledge of their status, participants wouldn't be able to rig the game in their favor. Clarify. Those who don't know who they are forced to plan for the possibility of being anyone. The only way to ensure their own well-being is to act for the benefit of society as a whole. Definitely don't agree that that is the outcome, or at least the singular outcome. But, we'll get there when we look at our ideas. Back it up. They wouldn't be able to, at all. How can that be true? Let's revisit a common example involving human self-interest. Given the world's limited resources, those in power are often tempted to steal resources from the vulnerable. But leaders who don't know their own identities can't act on such temptation. If they treat any group poorly, they risk discovering that they themselves are a member of the mistreated group. So the only way to not screw themselves is to not screw anyone at all. That is accurate and succinct, if crudely worded. Connected. All governments depend on willing cooperation, yes? Well, removing selfishness from designing the system will result in a fair system. A societal structure that would certainly result in the needed cooperation. Such leaders would be compelled to design a fair system, one that guarantees willing cooperation from all citizens. Clarify? Under the veil of ignorance, leaders have no choice but to pursue fairness. And if the system is fair, all citizens will stand behind it. Are there citizens also behind this veil? No, the veil is only a temporary state applied to leaders at the moment of decision. I guess stripping everyone's identity forever is too sci-fi even for a thought experiment. Back it up. Seems pretty self-evident. If the government structures society fairly, no reasonable citizen would object to it. I certainly object to it. Am I unreasonable? You're both unreasonable. Everyone's unreasonable. Everything is unreasonable. Connect. This was my overall point and the reason the original position is effective. It creates a society that benefits all. And a society that benefits all is a society everyone will approve of, is it not? Alrighty. Let's check out our idea. Debate is a test of ideas meant to help us decide what principles are best. If you view transactions only monetarily, you miss other benefits, like sunsets apparently. My opponent is a covert fascist. I kind of want to use that one. There are only so many resources to go around. Ultimately, we have to make do with what we have. Many individuals are incapable of seeing beyond their own wants and needs and act for themselves alone. Hmm. Oops. John has such high-minded ideals, it's almost noble. I take it you have objections. Of course, but I can't just tell you what I think. That'd be no fun. But I'll vaguely gesture. Consider the problem he's trying to solve, Ariadne, and who he's really solving it for. Well, back to the top, I guess. Actually, that's a pretty nice hint. I still have no idea what to do here, but I guess if I were to take that hint and run with it, it does kind of seem like a avoiding responsibility kind of thing, where you make decisions and then you have no accountability, basically. I'm gonna rock with that. Rawls, what do you think of this? Sorry, Miss Jones, but I don't think much of it, actually. Neither do I. Nor I. Okay? Okay, jeez. Alright. Maybe we'll save for this guy, too. Maybe it doesn't go there, but I think it'll... I do not want to talk to him.
Nonsense!
Couldn't they still serve self-interest, even in this thought experiment? How exactly? They have no idea who they are. But what if they play the odds, favor whatever group is the majority? But then they risk emerging in an extremely disadvantaged position. It's actually in their self-interest to make sure every possible self has something to be interested in. And doing so creates a system all would agree with. Is that so? Okay, so... if that's the case, then limited resources is the way to go. But would it go here? No, it would not. Kind of throwing stuff at the wall here. I know how I want to respond, but what is the specific place to respond? Alright, let's go with this one. Limited resources. Nope. Consider the problem and who he's trying to solve the problem for. Yeah, I do not know. I do not know. It definitely feels like it's one of these last ones. I just have no idea. I guess I'm gonna throw things at the wall here until they stick. 'Cause I'm not really sure. What to do about this. That's not what I want to do. Alright, I think it's probably this last one. We're just gonna throw a reason for debate, because that one seems like another possible. Nope. And let's just call him a fascist. While we're going to fail. You're a fascist, Rawl. Look at you, saying all these fascist things. Really? You're going there? Why not? Being called a fascist is normal Tuesday in politics. The idea any that sort of social welfare is a slippery slope to an authoritarian regime depends on a number of fallacies. Making sure no one lives in poverty or ignorance can only give the people better tools to resist the power of a tyrant. And if the original position is correctly applied, it should be clear that fascism is an entirely unacceptable system by definition. It gives power only to a few. Neat. Rawls actually had a well-thought-out response to the F-bomb. Fortunately for you, that doesn't make your original accusation any less distasteful. Oh, this is not nearly as engaging as I thought it would be. What do you say, John? Should we split? I suppose so. This is all far too much attention for me anyway. Wait, you're going to leave just like that? Guys? I guess this is it, isn't it? There is no way I'm getting out now. Game over. Hey, Sinuses. Okay. Have self-interest. We're throwing stuff that sticks. I have no idea. I think I did self-interest.
Nonsense!
Yeah, I did do self-interest for this one. Reason for debate did not work.
Nonsense!
Apparently that one is self-interest? That's crazy. That one is self-interest? That one. Didn't I do self-interest on that one? I must be crazy.
Nonsense!
Sometimes, you know, you just don't know. But I felt like I did self-interest on that one. Or at least I convinced myself that I did self-interest on that one so that I didn't need to do it again. Rawls. Successful governments require willing cooperation, correct? Correct. And cooperation falls apart when leaders put their own interests first. Also correct. The people see that the government is not looking out for them. This is the value of the original position. It gives leaders perspective to choose what is most just for everyone. Most just for everyone. Gotta say, it's a nice ideal. But now we must face the non-ideal. This won't actually produce willing cooperation. What? Ah, I see your angle. This should be good. The original position tackles bias for decision makers, but does nothing about the rest of society. And when the decisions come down, people won't simply fall in line. But if the resulting good is not great, Rawls, and people want society to be great for themselves. Look, I assume neither of you played video games in your philosophical retirement homes, but bear with me. In this game, I play Battle Bakers 2. The developers are constantly rebalancing character types. They make some stronger and others weaker in order to create better gameplay. Not a perfect process, but most of the time they succeed. New dynamics emerge, and the game is kept fresh. But most players don't care about the whole game. They only gripe about changes to their own characters. Those monsters cut the productivity of cookie cutters by 15%? Who cares that the Gingerbread Rush combo was previously overpowered? Gingerbread Rush. Are you positing that our lives are part of some game? Would explain all the twists I've been put through. What? No, don't be ridiculous. But if people can't see beyond themselves in a game, where the stakes are far lower, how can you ever expect them to do so in real life? Nice little bit of, not fourth wall breaking, but maybe like 3.75 wall touching. Oh. It boils down to this, Rawls. People struggle to put themselves in others' shoes, especially when they benefit from not doing so. They all see how decisions affect them, Or as Fanon would point out, people like them. So even if they only lose a little in pursuit of a better whole, they'll still believe their government neglects them. They'll kick and scream and complain loudly on social media. There are a lot of nice things about your thought experiment, but an ability to unite everyone isn't one of them. So even if the government could adopt this unbiased state, we'd still be doomed. Marcus, cancel the amnesia machine. Very slick, Ariadne Jones. It was astute of you to respect the self-interest of individuals, something old Rawls here always loses sight of. I mean, whether I respect it or not, people will find the systems their leaders choose unfair, no matter the leader's intentions. When you distribute resources according to a pattern, some will lose something. It's inevitable. And no one ever asks the impacted citizens for their consent, do they? There's no such thing as fair redistribution. Patterned principles are inherently unjust.
Nonsense!
Hold on, Nozick. Why are patterned principles unjust? Excuse me? My objection to Rawls was that it seemed difficult to choose a pattern everyone would like. That's more about how people would respond than the rules themselves. Well, you're saying such rules are inherently bad. Why? John, you know what this means. Naturally. Change places. What just... Robert is about to present one of his different ideas. As he provided limited support when you challenged me, I shall do the same as you challenged him. See, it only seems fair. You'll need all the help you can get. My logic is incredibly sound. I've even brought slides. Wow, we got slides. Let's say we redistribute wealth, achieving whatever spread we deem acceptable. We'll call this D1. But suddenly, Wilt Chamberlain appears. He's decided to play again, and everyone wants to pay to see the game. When all is said and done, Wilt could amass more money than anyone else. A new pattern has emerged, D2. Every transaction was voluntary, but our ideal wealth distribution has broken. So any pattern would demand we cancel the game, or take Wilt's earnings. Pattern principles will constantly violate people's liberty to freely exchange for what they want. And there we go. You've always favored colorful thought experiments, Nozick. And I'll admit, the diagrams are quite nice. Indeed, I'd expect nothing less from the creator of the utility monster. But I do have a question for you. Who is this Wilt Chamberlain? Oh, Arbiter, my poor, poor man. Sometimes I forget how ancient you are. Actually, I don't know who it is either. Is he a streamer or something? Oh no. Is my topical reference outdated? Am I the old one? Wilt Chamberlain was a famous basketball player, Miss Jones. Started with the Globetrotters, ended with the Lakers. Ah, well, I don't care much for sports. Yes, that must be it. Surely my references are still hip with the kids of today. As hip as philosophy in general. Shall we begin? Sure, let's see what Nozick knows. Poor Nozick. Alrighty. Let's say that we redistribute wealth, achieving whatever spread we deem acceptable. Call this D1. Clarify. Your chart shows everyone starting with the same cash. Are you assuming that's the pattern we'd apply? Not at all. I'm only showing a flat distribution because it's easy to track the changes visually. Our starting distribution could also be like this. Or like this. All that matters is we've chosen an ideal pattern of wealth and achieved it. Back it. Isn't really the sort of statement one needs to support, it's just the initial setup to the argument. We're assuming that we've succeeded at any of the various distributive ideals. And connect. This assumes we've achieved the dream of Rawls, Marx, or any other philosopher who believes in pattern principles. Starting with such an assumption makes it easy to highlight the issues they have. The issues you have. When I'm done, my dear John, I won't be the only one who sees the problems. Alright, but suddenly, Wilt Chamberlain appears. He's decided to play again. And everyone wants to pay to see the game. Clarify. Wilt Chamberlain, famous basketball player, is playing a game. People want to see him play. But how does he appear so suddenly? Is he also a wizard? Wilt would walk into the scene normally. I was just embellishing. No, I'm not gonna make you update your statement for that, Nozick. How Wilt enters isn't relevant. Statement unupdated. Why would everyone want to see Wilt Chamberlain play? Excuse me? I just don't understand why people go crazy about athletes doing athlete stuff. It's a thought experiment. Wilt Chamberlain could be substituted for anything a large group would want to see. But you'd understand if you'd ever seen him play. It's unfortunate Wilt passed on even before I did. Oh, so he's dead. This would be a spooky zombie basketball game. Maybe I would pay to see that. Sure, yes, everyone will pay because they want to see spooky zombies play basketball. The reason people want to pay doesn't matter, as long as there is something that people want to pay for. Connected. Establishes the thought experiment that is core to my argument. When all is said and done, Wilt could amass more money than anyone else. A new pattern has emerged. D2. Clarify. Must admit I'm not sure how to clarify this beyond what is shown in the chart. If everyone gives Wilt Chamberlain money, the result is that Wilt has a lot of money. But can you back that? I could present a mathematical proof, I suppose, but that seems like overkill. Aren't you an accountant? This is simple arithmetic. If you take a bit from 2,000 equal piles and transfer the sum to the final one, the piles are no longer equal. I mean, look. Not the same, see? Yes, I see. But can you connect it? It establishes the results of the thought experiment, setting up our conclusion. Some kid, who is this Michael Jordan? Yeah. That, I don't know if that will happen for like 200 years. Obviously I'm being a little facetious, but when you're talking about, at least in my eyes, the greatest person to ever do what they had, or ever do what they did in the sport and kind of redefine those sports. I feel like he's going to be remembered for a very long time. In the same manner that when we go to history class and we learn about the founding fathers and things like that. This is one of those things where it's like, if you're going into basketball, you're going to know about Michael Jordan. Unfortunately, it's a lot more difficult to transfer this to mediums like rap music, because there's not really any one person who has completely dominated the scene and done so in a way that completely changes the fabric of what hip-hop can do. to the point where they will be taught, or they will always be remembered as, you know, an OG or something like that. Now, to give credit where credit's due, Drake is potentially a good candidate for that. But, you know, Kendrick Lamar happened, so maybe that'll put a chink in his run. Maybe. We'll probably assume he is the shoe guy. I mean, that's part of the legacy. So you can, I mean, the shoes came from him playing basketball. So, like, however you get there, you're still going to be there. It just may not be in the vicinity that you wanted. There are other rappers than Eminem. There are a lot of rappers, like Tech-9. Can't believe the Chocolates made an album. That's crazy. The Chocolates? Who the sucker fools the Chocolates? Anyways. Every transaction was voluntary, but our ideal wealth distribution has broken. So any pattern would demand we cancel the game or take Wilt earnings. Clarify. Eminem? Oh, I see what you did there. I got you. As Machine Gun Kelly would say, I was named after a gangster. You were named after some candy. Any pattern that cares about maintaining some distribution of wealth will be broken the moment anyone does anything. Even if all actions were taken voluntarily, they'd have to be undone to restore the ideal distribution. Back it up. Every single person in this thought experiment participated willingly, and willing actions should intuitively be allowed. But if we're trying to maintain a pattern of wealth, we'll have to intervene, either before the transaction or after, to maintain the pattern. Given this, it seems clear that pattern-based principles are covertly authoritarian. All right, connect it. This is the crux of it. Any pattern that manages wealth will have to be constantly maintained, and this maintenance inevitably interferes with the economic choices of consenting adults. Pattern principles will constantly violate people's liberty to freely exchange for what they want. Verify. Any significant transaction will break our distributive ideal. Thus, in order to maintain the ideal, we would have to constantly interfere with these transactions. My previous statements illustrate this point. Pattern principles of justice require constant interference in people's lives. And connect. Overall point, distributive ideals do not work in practice. Alright. So, utility beyond money is what we want to use. It would probably have to be on these last two ones, and I'm going to try this one first. Maybe. Yeah, we'll try it on this one first.
Nonsense!
Okay, Nozick. Consenting adults must be free to make their own transactions, yes? I've been pretty clear about that. And patterns have to interfere because any transaction breaks their vision of justice. Indeed, money has moved. The distribution of wealth will no longer comply with the specified goal. I get it. On the surface, that seems hard to argue with. That's because you're dealing with a surface analysis of transactions. Excuse me? This entire time, you've been talking about patterns and transactions that track only one variable, monetary wealth. But cold hard cash is only one thing individuals can value, and the model gets more complicated if we acknowledge that. What do you mean, Ariadne? Let's say we track another type of wealth. How about, I don't know, happiness? Still have a bit of nostalgia for utilitarianism. I don't say that word very often. Probably less than 10 times in my entire lifetime. And I've been alive for millions of years. If we add happiness to our assessment of transactions, we get a starting state like this. What is, imagined up a widescreen, baby, increases my happiness to not use archaic slides. This is our starting point, H1. Though the people all have money, they're not super happy. They may even have negative happiness. These sad sacks are so emotionally dependent on sports, and no sports are happening. But after the game, we get this. H2. Even though the non-wilts lost money, they gained greater happiness. The total comfort is better than when we started, which makes sense, as that's why people wanted to see the game in the first place. Suddenly, it seems less certain a pattern would have to interfere. The results were positive for all. But if the game's terrible, and the fans are charged $1 billion, H3. Wow, those are some sad, sad bars for everyone but Wilt. Seems more like something we would want to interfere with. The non-wilts are left with so little, future transactions would grind to a halt. No accountant, but this math checks out. Nozick. To assume all patterns would constantly interfere requires a lack of nuance. It's possible to design rules that only protect us from intense edge cases, that otherwise leave our autonomy intact. And then, wilt or non-wilt, we'll all have a sporting chance. Well, astutely put, Miss Jones. Using your own charts was a nice touch. Now, if we could consider for a moment how we should go about designing such a pattern. Let me guess, by using the original position. Well, since you mention it, let's not invest too much stock in Ariadne's charts just yet. After all, they're likely to crash the market. Think I raised pretty solid points. Your argument was clever, but it does not match the strength of my convictions. Very little interference from the government can be justified, and what you described doesn't fit the bill. We shouldn't intervene just because an exchange might make one of the parties a little sad. No, only a minarchist state can give people the autonomy they deserve. A minarchist state, what does that mean? Marx introduced the idea of anarchism earlier. Is that related? Much of my work was in response to the call of anarchism. I could see the appeal, though my variant of choice was anarcho-capitalism. But a minarchist state is a better option for a variety of reasons. Much can be accomplished with a very slight government. Game is rigged. I want my money back. Yeah, I want your money too. Our world starts wholly unowned, and anyone can lay claim to it. Individuals can claim as much property as they're able, with little limitation. But once claimed, goods must be able to be freely exchanged without theft, force, or fraud. A minimal state would therefore form to protect against such aggression. The state exists only as a night watchman, taking action against those who violate these principles. Yes, individuals have rights, and there are things no person or group may do to them. Only the barest minimum state is needed to properly enforce this order. And that state basically just protects people's stuff. Rights are less a matter of freedom to than they are freedom from. They define not what I'm allowed to do, but what you're not allowed to do to me. As a result, anything that does not explicitly harm another individual is fair game. Whether I'm poor or rich, I should be free to use my holdings as I see fit. Right, because the poor have so many holdings to work with. See, this is why I can't stand libertarians. More or less than communists, because you were pretty prickly with Marx, too. They're all terrible. Humanity is hopeless, and all our political constructs are trash. Okay, she's definitely getting worse. Well, seeing as Roberts has already presented his ideas, perhaps we can engage with them and see for ourselves. Right. Our world starts wholly unowned, and anyone can lay claim to it. Clarify. The world started as an untamed wilderness ripe for the taking. Back it up. Do you believe the world started divided into countries, states, cities, and farms? Humanity had to claim areas they found desirable, build a fence, mix labor with local resources, and come to own them. Well, sure, humans weren't everywhere initially. But what about animals? They have territory they've claimed, right? I dedicated a section of my book to this very topic. Animals are rarely valued by my colleagues. But I believe animals count for something. Higher animals, at least, should be given weight in deliberations about what to do. Suppose you could view animals as having their own claims, and alter the principles of libertarianism accordingly. Where they roam, they own. That's not a position I hold, but it's certainly a matter worth pondering. Connect. This establishes there's ample room for individuals to make their mark on the world. Individuals can claim as much property as they're able with little limitation. Clarify? It's up to individuals to claim as much of the unclaimed as they can. You also said with little limitation. So is there some limitation? Yes, a little thing I call the Lockean proviso. Oh no, you named it after him? His ego's big enough already. Well, I did this decades ago, so perhaps I'm partly responsible. Regardless, the proviso stipulates all claims are acceptable unless the claim actively makes life worse for other individuals. It's a principle that will kick in very rarely. Still seems like an important part of your structure. Can you update your argument to reflect that? Right, there are no limits on how much property someone can claim as long as others' prospects are not directly worsened. Clarify, the statement is functionally the same as before. Individuals are free to claim as much as they can as long as it doesn't block others from their needs. What evidence do you have to support? Suppose you come across the only oasis in the desert and string a hammock between two trees. Should you thereby come to own the whole oasis? No, of course not. If you claimed this limited necessity for yourself, you would condemn all others who need to cross the desert. Now suppose you develop a novel cure for cancer, claim intellectual property rights to it, and want to charge people exorbitant prices to use it. Should the state grant a patent that allows you to do this? Is this also a no? I'm gonna be honest, kind of guessing here. I'd say it's a yes. Others could find another cure after all. And with the property right to the cure, you should be free to sell the resulting drug for whatever sum you wish. So we're good on cancer profiteering then. Wonderful. Connect. It It establishes how individuals come to own property and specifies the one limitation that regulates the process. When once claimed, goods must be able to be freely exchanged without theft, force, or fraud. Clarify. Individuals must be able to seek whatever transactions they desire. To do so, they must also be confident they won't be coerced or misled. A free market is hardly free if your decisions are made under threat of force, after all. Back it up. While people can lay claim to many things, it's impossible for anyone to claim everything. It follows that individuals will both control goods that others need and need goods controlled by others. So once private property has been appropriated, we are morally required to have a free market. That way, people can request and trade assets they own for assets they want. And we're just okay with the results no matter what happens. If somewhere in the chain of transaction, theft, coercion, or fraud occurred, we could safely say the property involved is unjustly held. The minarchist state should then intervene. But otherwise, all holdings can be considered just. And connect. This establishes how individuals can exchange profiting off their various holdings and creations. A minimal state would therefore form to protect against such aggression. Clarifying. Individuals do not have a right to threaten or coerce others, but they do have a right to punish those who do. This value is commonly referred to as the non-aggression principle. But as you discussed with Locke, individual responses are difficult, so we need a minimal state to carry out such punishments. Back it up. This follows the model of many of my predecessors, Locke, Hobbes, Rousseau. People seek agreements that protect their rights. In the free market, individuals would voluntarily contract others who provide protection services. These transactions would form a network of private security, a minimal state created without even trying. As people will opt for the version that best suits them, any violating companies would have their services replaced with another. What if these security agencies attack those who are not under contract? A fair question. I have a few more charts on the subject. No more charts. Fine, I will summarize. All will learn that warfare is not in the interest of the security companies or their clients. And connect. This establishes how a state could be consistent with the principles of libertarianism. Simply, that such a state is something people would agree to without coercion. The state exists only as a night watchman, taking action against those who violate these principles. Verify? By night watchman, I mean that the minimal state does not involve itself in the lives of citizens except to protect against the aggression of others. Bodies that provide such protection are justified, the courts, police, and military. But any more extensive state will violate a person's right to not be forced to participate and is unjustified. Back it up. This should be an intuitive extension of our natural ownership of ourselves, but I'll explain anyway. If someone steals from you and the government helps track them down, the government is acting in your interest. Similarly, if you lose your rights in a coercive contract, the court should help defend you. But let's say the government taxes you 20% of your wealth and uses that money to build a park. Did you care about that park? Maybe, but you didn't get to choose. You might have wanted to use that money on a school or to build a house. Seizing the results of someone's labor is equivalent to seizing hours from him and directing him to carry on various activities. In short, taxation of earnings from labor is on par with forced labor. It does seem a little extreme, but it makes enough sense. So basically, if you didn't consent to the project, you shouldn't be forced to contribute to it. Exactly, consent is always key. One could say you consented when you joined the social contract giving you access to society's advantages. But I've tried that argument. Nozick never buys it. Neither would Rousseau or countless other philosophers. You don't choose where you're born. Fair point, which is why the original position strips that away, doesn't it? Hey, polite reminder not to let the discussion run away without me. Sorry. And connect. This establishes why a minarchist state is the best option in the extent to which government is still necessary. Okay. This one's a tough one. Let's consult. God, Nozick reminds me of Franklin Tucker, your political opponent. A jerk wants to get rid of every program we have and spins it in the name of justice. Even uses the same everyman comparisons. Programs only work by taking from someone else, like poor defenseless Elon Musk. I'm really surprised they put the name, well, I guess they have names of real people in here. Anyways, I hate Franklin Tucker, and he's going to win, Andy. He's going to win. He'll definitely win if we don't get you out of here. Come on, let's get back to it. This one's a tough one. Must refrain from political comments or jokes. I don't know why you have to refrain from that. It's the hardest JRPG boss, to be honest. This one's a tough one. Obviously, there are chinks in the armor here. But not where, but like what? Well, yeah, where in what would any of these come into play? Okay, self-interest. I guess you can make the argument that it's in, if you have a system like this, it's in the interest of people who violate the principles to I guess make the night watchman violate their duty. Let's try that.
Nonsense!
What stops the state from serving its own interests? Absolutely nothing. Nothing? In fact, the desire to serve itself will be part of what makes the state work. To dive a bit more into how minarchist governments form, they exist because people will inherently want to hire such protection. But there will be multiple options for those protection services, see? So people will go to the best one. It's in their best interest to do that job well, to win the voluntary cooperation of as many as possible. These are good questions, Ariadne. I could go into this for quite a while. A whole book of ideas, in fact, available at any local bookseller. Books. Suckers, suckers, suckers. Had the sneeze. Went away. Okay, so... limited resources could kind of work. Let's save. Chick Slice was talking about the everyman. It definitely feels like limited resources and self-interest are the most relevant right now. Let's try limited resources.
Nonsense!
Nozick, you were so pleased when I challenged Rawl's ideal of unity with the realities of our non-ideal world. Of course, the veil of ignorance can only exist in the realm of theory. People can't simply discard their self-interest. And you believe your philosophy avoids similar pitfalls. The rights of individuals are at its core, so individuals will find little to complain about. Not so sure. Because instead of worrying about the government, they now have to worry about every other person on the planet. Do explain, Ariadne Jones. In Nozick's case, the core issue is not human nature, but the nature of the world. Because no matter how clever you are, there are only so many goods to claim. Eventually, some will be shut out. But I accounted for that. Right, the Lockean proviso, allowing us to block transactions that harm others. You argue this proviso rarely matters, and I guess I could believe that if the world was largely unoccupied. But in a world that's densely populated, where resources are not adequately distributed, in other words, our world, you could easily make the argument that every claim does harm. The first time someone says, "I own this," someone down the chain could starve. Come to think of it, that's the argument Marx made, isn't it? You've opened the door to the very philosophy you despise most. That unkempt. So, there we go, Nozick. When placed in the real world, the Lockean proviso kicks in far more often than you intended. Your pure protection of property rights is hardly pure at all. So what you're saying is, when we finally nail space travel and go to other planets and things like that, we have our form of government. The perfect form of government. Well stated once again, Ariadne Jones. It really was. Only there were a if only there were a metric more nuanced than the Lockean proviso. May have some thoughts on that very subject. Well, shucks, John. You could have spoken up earlier. You tried, but you nonsensed over it. I guess that's true. Apologies, John. I got carried away. It's not a big deal. Shall we continue? Please. Well then, only one thing to do. Change places! How they do that so quickly. Luckily, Miss Jones's objection leads nicely to what I wish to say. While the veil of ignorance is a thought experiment, it serves to create an honest assessment of the world as it is. The various constraints and strains on society were very much on my mind. Now, as Miss Jones has said, Robert has demonstrated, some people will always struggle to see beyond themselves. Nonetheless, I believe the original position can identify an approach that will reach a critical threshold of support.